People want to believe that. That's the thing. People, I see that all the time where they're just like, what do you do? What kind of camera do you use? What do you record on? What do you make beats on? What's different from you? What's the reason I can't do what you do? And the reason is you just don't want to do it.
Hey, ladies and germs. It's your boy back with a very impromptu, spur-of-the-moment edition of chill content to mope to. And boy, am I mopey this morning as I have my morning coffee. Actually, I'm almost out. But first, I just want to outline the trigger of this particular recording. The TLDR is I need to vent a lot of shit lest I tweet about it and override any time and effort that could be spent on things that I have already got planned. There are multiple videos in the pipeline. I'm really excited about all of them. They're much chiller, less standoffish than what I've been doing, more in touch with my actual creativity and not just my fucking opinionism. But how could you not be opinionated a month like this month, where a very controversial, provocative piece of work was put on Netflix? No more beating around the bush, no more passive-aggressive tagging of people who are on the receiving end of this person's bullshit. I'm talking Dave Chappelle, who quite succinctly said in a clip that's been making its rounds on the internet,
"And if you want to meet with me, I'd be more than willing to, but I have some conditions. First of all, you cannot come if you have not watched my special from beginning to end."
Alright, boo-boo. Well, I've seen it now. Ain't nobody inviting me to no meeting, but I'm gonna have my own meeting with myself and my internal version of what other people mean. Welcome to the fucking internet. So a recent phenomenon that I've been seeing is something that happens every once in a while. Whenever there's a big hoopla about jokes that this person or that person said that pissed off a lot of people, this is a rare occasion where it's actually about two comedians at the same time. Dave Chappelle, hot off the heels of his latest incendiary, controversial masterpiece, The Closer, a bookend to his slew of Netflix specials that he's been releasing for the past few years, and Hannah Gadsby, a very overtly progressive woman with stories out the wazoo of her experience with gender-specific adversity.
I love angry white man comedy. They're adorable. Why are they angry? What's up, little fella? Like the canaries in the mine, aren't they? If they're having a tough time, the rest of us are goners.
And thirdly, you must admit that Hannah Gadsby is not funny.
For the purposes of this video, Dave drew first blood. And then, in an act that should be no surprise to anyone who knows how influencers work, it's in the goddamn name, I don't know why people are so behind on this concept, his army of adoring fans went out and started World War III on Twitter.
Which isn't a real place you're on Dave Chappelle.
Me being who I am, I vented a bit about this a few days before, getting around to watching the special. My fellow film nerd, Toby, an avid fan of Chappelle for a while, as I have been, admittedly. Now, Toby hasn't been very happy with the aftermath of David's new special. I'm so tired of this, love Dave, always will, but honestly, cry about it. He was just as confused as I was as to why David would bring up Hannah Gadsby, leaving her vulnerable to the pent-up adolescent frustration of the viewer base. It more than likely has to do with when the CEO of Netflix, who came out and defended Dave's special, name-dropped her as an example of the progressive undertones that Netflix does in fact have as a company. So Dave, not a petty person at all with the content that he makes, said she wasn't funny. Now they're saying it's not funny. It seems that we can't have one comedy special come out that makes a splash, for better or worse, without highlighting and fetishizing the contrast between Rotten Tomato scores. Now, the preceding thread on this tweet actually did give me some valuable insight. This one philosopher said, "It's trash, that's why." Wow. Rent-free. Twitter is not a real place indeed. You can't take the way people feel and think away from this fucking platform. Of course not. Nah. It's just a video game. Some Netflix exec used her as an example of the variety of content in a statement about Chappelle, as I said. Twitter kind of ran with it since. Yeah, it ran with it, all right. I wouldn't exactly say it was a single party doing it, though. Twitter found her comedy special. I hate this, as you could tell from my reply, but I really, really hate this. This is going to be the meat of this ramble for today. We'll start with the Rotten Tomatoes scores. I've reached a stage in my life where I try really, really hard not to care about these shits, even for regular movies, not just comedy specials. There is a difference between the way a established professional film critic watches a movie and the average Joe watches a movie. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule. You have shitty critics who have no idea what they're talking about, be it because of, I don't know, an ineptness of reading the thing, or are too overly compromised by their own personal politics or worldview, or sometimes they just subjectively didn't like the fucking thing. All three of those are valid. The first two are obviously more open to picking apart if you consider yourself a critical person. Hell, even the last one is. But it's a lot harder to argue with how someone feels when experiencing art. Citizen Kane losing its 100% status on Rotten Tomatoes is not indicative of anything. Anything. Like, yeah, in all likelihood, some comedian at Rotten Tomatoes probably thought it would be funny to dig up a review from years and years and years ago buried within the mounds of dirt of time to make that happen, but ultimately, it doesn't really fucking matter. But with controversial content, be it a Star Wars movie or a Ghostbusters reboot, these numbers are politicized and weaponized to just dunk on an opposing party. Edgy sycophants of Dave will get this to 96. Film critics, you know, an industry full of liberal arts majors who probably put a little more thought into the sociology of the shit that they consume, are going to score it a little lower. And then you have Hannah Gadsby, whose audience score, if I recall correctly, dropped substantially after Dave fired his shot, though it is also at 100%. I saw this months ago and really, really liked it. Inversely, I saw this last night, and save for a few bits where Dave did what Dave does best, hitting that sweet spot between being a shitlord and mining some golden wisdom out of weird, shitty situations. I really, really didn't like it. Was I going into it ready to hate it to some degree? Yeah, it's called having biases. We all do it, even you watching this right now. While I need to go back and watch them just to make sure I do indeed still feel this way, I loved his first wave of specials when he came back to do stand-up. He was pretty edgy in those as well, but he really did seem to be looking for truth and clarity on very controversial issues. Racism, classism, bigotry. A bunch of shit that he has horses in the race of.
Man, Donald Trump's gonna go to Washington and he's gonna fight for us. I'm standing there thinking to my mind, you dumb motherfucker. You are poor. He's fighting for me.
I also just recall the timing being, like, exquisite. When he ended that one special detailing the life and death of Emmett Till before circling back to a gag at the beginning of the special.
So I kicked her in the pussy. Bam!
Like, bravo. Holy shit. That was so good. One of the best buttons on any special of comedy I had ever seen. All this to say, I'm not coming at him as some hater or some snowflake. I take this shit seriously. I watch a wide range of comedy. I appreciate voices of all walks of life. This special was lazy, and not all it's cracked up to be on its more charitable viewers. Most of all because of sections like this, where he addresses the Kevin Hart controversy from a few years ago. Kevin Hart dreamt his entire life of hosting the Oscars, and when he finally got the job, they took it! It's not fair! Hope you appreciate the ounce of Cosby that was in that voice. Vic Berger retweets, very important jokes. Which immediately reminded me of a sentiment I've been having a lot lately. I hate these comedians who just say stuff to get claps. They found her comedy special. Oh wow, this is a modern comedian. Jon Stewart, an irrelevant comedian who doesn't believe in cancel culture. Like, I'm so sick of that shit, man. Yeah, they're all comedians. It's a job that they have. I'm guilty of doing this myself, but now that I've, been on the other end of its usage, it's just, it's a non sequitur. To be 100% fair, the more tasteful thing to do would be to call them all comedians. And then call these two some shitty ones.
This girl's reading everything. You just want to read. I feel like that would, if you read a lot, you'd become bisexual. Like, you just keep reading, and then one day you get, I don't know, some words, and then, okay.
I planted a Hennessy tree, but it's not growing.
Well, technically it did grow, but that shit ain't XO.
I put it in the ground.
I planted a VSOP XO tree. I'm getting into some niche esoteric cognac humor, motherfucker.
Don't white people just go to their neighborhoods and build urban farms and ruin their communities? Isn't that
That's
how it works?
In Detroit. Turns out the soil content is a high level of meth.
Yeah, crazy. Whoa.
Wow, I didn't know.
Next summer on Broadway. 6 foot days, 5 foot danger.
Numbers going up.
Listen, you humiliated yourself. You embarrassed our entire family. People took off work to watch what you just did.
And it ironically circles back to the subject of my last upload. Disagreeing. I'm gonna get mad. I'm going to pick apart criticisms that I think are frankly very, very stupid. But this, my friends, is how you properly disagree with something. This isn't looking at gay people or black people or white people or trans people and going, I disagree. That's nothing. It's empty. It's dangling. It has no usage in that context. This are opinions that we are challenging amongst ourselves to find the right answers to things. This is disagreeing. These contrasts and scores are a visual representation of disagreement. They're not a Full Metal Jacket wackadoo gotcha of how good or bad these things are, especially not with something this controversial. This happened with Dave's last special, Sticks and Stones, another one that I didn't really care for. It had some good material in it. I liked his set piece about home invasion and shotguns. I thought that was very physical and cute. It was a lot cuter than the 20 or so times that he would say something he knew he would get shit for and then go off stage. You little rapscallion and your bullshit. I can't stay mad at you, Dave. Yeah, but Lanooski, was it funny? Well, the critics' consensus says it won't elicit many laughs, so I guess it wasn't funny. Yeah. A quick aside, was it funny though? Were there tits explosions of watching comedy? Transformers. Any of them. Hell, any Michael Bay movie, period. I got a lot of fucking intellectuals watching right now who would ordinarily watch movies like this and try to decipher the craft of the filmmaking and the writing and the acting. Yeah, but was it cool though? Was it entertaining? Transformers 1 was actually pretty entertaining. I actually like it quite a bit as far as 2000s blockbusters go. Because if you watch things through different lenses, you can enjoy them for different reasons. If you watch Sticks and Stones through the lens of, I agree with this stuff, I like this little rib at the snowflakes, then yeah, it's funny. If you watch it as a fan of Dave Chappelle, who acknowledges how revolutionary his comedy was for the longest time, there are parts of it that are funny, but a good chunk of it just came off as contrived and not very educated on the plight of the trans community. Is it funny? Someone isn't actually funny. It's nothing. It's nothing. That's what I'm getting at here. Like, I would take these sentiments so much more seriously if you simply added, I think or don't think, followed by a because to your opinion. And that's what it is. It's an opinion. Art, its digestion and analysis is only opinions. Stop with this fucking objectivity. Because in so many other situations, if someone falls in hot water for making a joke, a lot of these same people will go, well, comedy's subjective. What are we doing? Okay. You know how I said I was going to get more coffee? I never actually did it, so I'm gonna cease recording and come back when I've cooled off. Okay, so I think a worthwhile thing to do would be to read some of these reviews. A 35, while low, is indicative of a mixed crowd watching this thing. There were moments in the special that I can get behind, but there were others that I'm shocked that Netflix gave the go-ahead to. See, I would have to read like the full one, but that reads as either, oh wow, they probably should have edited this, or, wow, I'm surprised you said that. You can't say that anymore. Too lazy to read. Sorry, man. I'm sure you're cool. I like your name. Overall, I found the special funny, entertaining, and yes, very edgy. But more importantly, I feel like, in the end, the world of comedy benefited from it. Okay, Roger Moore, I've seen you quite a bit, dude. You've got our attention, pal. You just haven't delivered the funny. Oh, look at that. Look at that. What did I tell you? Subjectivity. Yes, but was it funny? Well, it's a little hard to determine that when everyone has a different definition of funny. Anyway, moving on. Lacking empathy can certainly be amusing, but Sticks and Stones is a tired routine by a man who forgot to layer jokes into his act, too often sounding like a pundit on Fox News. On point. And that's going to be important later. Sticks and Stones registers as a temper tantrum, the product of a man who wants it all. Money, fame, and influence without much having to answer to anyone. That can be said of a lot of entertainers. It's just really tragic that it applies to a guy who did have all of it, noticed that a lot of people weren't necessarily laughing for the reasons that he wanted them to, and then dipped. Even made a very poetic and effective monologue about it at the end of his last special before Sticks and Stones. That one was pretty mixed too in hindsight, some pretty whack things to say to people who might have been affected by the events that prompted Me Too. He had lots of Me Too stuff to say in Sticks and Stones and the one that he just released, but...
One lady said, Louis C.K. masturbating in front of me ruined my comedy dreams. Word? Well, then I dare say, madam, you may have never had a dream. How the fuck are you going to survive in show business if this is an actual obstacle to your dreams?
It's very old man, these takes. Very, look, I put up with a lot of stuff. It's a tough business, and if you ain't willing to do it, you just shouldn't do it. Yeah, but the whole fucking point is it's harder for them, Dave. Like, there's nothing to argue about there.
I'm gonna do anything, I swear, my children. Please come in. On everything, I'm a famous guy.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Please come in now.
Like, you spent the whole first half of your career outlining how Whitey can't necessarily understand the plight of, you. Like, that's what empathy is. And you claim to know that. But let's look at these audience. Oh, this isn't. Once. Hold on. Oh, man. Audience ratings.
Hilarious. Loved it. Again and again. Amazingly funny. One of the best comedy specials I've ever seen. So freaking good. I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. Time with family well spent.
Honest and insightful in a time that most of us are afraid we're incapable of being either. Aw, great, fresh, good take on humor. If you can take a joke, it's great. I didn't like your take on humor in that one. Doesn't get much better. True. Support the true artist. Jokes like that keep comedy alive. I think Dave is soft sometimes on jokes about own people, but is his style he needs at least someone's support on his side? I feel like this sums up the worldview and grammatical capability of a lot of people who watch comedy. Nice to have Chappelle back, incendiary, offensive to those that dabble in misconstruing jokes to feign victimhood, but absolutely hilarious. Sticks and Stones is one of the best modern Chappelle stand-up shows. He doesn't hold back and goes off on everyone. This is comedy in its purest form. No limits, no whining about sensitivities. That's debatable if you really want to... Let's analyze this sentence. Whining about sensitivities is a two-way street. You're either the person whining that you're not accounting for someone's fifis or ignoring sociological history in regards to the context of the joke you're telling, or you got the other side about people bitching and moaning about cancel culture. And I don't know, man, a lot of Dave's material, a lot of the material for a lot of performers actually, seems to be about how you can't say certain things anymore. Or, oh, you couldn't make that movie today. Like, just stop whining about sensitivities. The first time watching will be to laugh at the jokes, but I recommend a second viewing, this time not for the jokes, but to listen to what he's actually saying. Dave Chappelle's Sticks and Stones is the GOAT. It's such a lame special, and so many people turned it into this rallying cry for free speech when so many other comedians, including Dave, have put out such better content. Louis C.K., Carlin, Pryor again. God, like, I've really been jumping into Pryor lately, and I've really been sleeping on that guy. His stuff is so fucking good. Some of it's dated, yeah, but you can tell that so much of it is just saying shit that actually needed to be said at the time. Which is ironic, because when some people try to say the same shit today, people are like, oh, they made it all political. I don't agree with him there. Like, we're going in circles. But I bring up the special because I also watched, disliked, simmered with, and eventually, after growing up a little bit, rewatched Chris Rock's Tambourine. Also 100%, also a low audience score. While I don't necessarily agree it's like 100% good, even though, like I said, these numbers don't fucking mean anything, it is a rock solid special, if you'll pardon the pun. That ordinarily I would have done something like that on purpose, but I'm sad to say that just came out of me. It's also worth bringing up that this special was directed by none other than Bo Burnham, who put a little behind-the-scenes work under his belt before he made Inside during quarantine. But this is such a divisive special. Like, Chris Rock, he's a funny guy. He's on a similar tier of comedy in terms of quality and just the social reverence that a lot of black performers get. Cover a lot of the same ground. Share a lot of the same opinions. Like, Chris Rock is no stranger to saying, look, y'all need to chill out. Y'all are too sensitive. I think even Donald Glover said something like that. And he's a pretty forwardly progressive guy, both with his music and his commentary. It's not brave to say that people are too sensitive. And Chris Rock has done that. But why would these snowflakey critics say stuff like, Tambourine is as intimate as it is ridiculous, and although the content of Rock's material drives this home when it needs to, the special is always ready to assist him when necessary. Tambourine is more of a look at what can be rather than what is. Looking to the future isn't what we're used to. There are few better masters of the form to help offer a way forward. The energy is different, but Rock is still very funny and occasionally still provocative, if only because the culture has shifted in recent years. But what pissed off these audience members? You know, the audience supposedly has their finger on the pulse of the nation more so than these hoity-toity liberal arts masters.
What the fuck is this? I didn't really find it funny at all and had a hard time finishing it because it was so boring and cringe at the same time.
Oh wow, we got paragraphs, hell yeah! They pushed through the beginning of a cringeworthy racist tirade on white people to see if Rock had anything worthwhile to offer. Seriously, 15 minutes filled with hate and made up facts. When I got to the other side of it, I was left severely disappointed with his non-racist bits. Truly a microcosm of the misinformation that plagues the black community every day. I've enjoyed a lot of his work, but I think if he took some time to educate himself with some real-world statistics, even Rock would be ashamed of this abomination. Sidebar, the fact that Kevin Hart was canceled for a gay joke from a decade ago, but in the same year, Netflix paid Chris Rock for the most racist 15 minutes of comedy in history, truly speaks to how lost our society is. No Name, you did your country good today. Thank you. You did a lot of my work for me. Another racist comedy show. Disgusting. James P. That's a weird way of spelling Karen. He's lost his touch. He looked drunk, high on shit, and comes out saying we need to shoot more white people. He adds to this negative racism against white people and killing cops. Dave Chappelle is a 5, Chris is a 0. Rotten Tomato Meter gives this 100%. They are racists. Sucks from start to finish, just cliche, I'm black and everybody is out to get me crap. Overdone and tired, I expected better from him. Extremely funny and intelligent jokes. The people who are offended by his white jokes take themselves way too seriously. He's making jokes about his experience and the way he sees the world, but people are mad because it doesn't match their experience. Yes, I'm white. No, I wasn't offended. I think if you were offended, you most likely are the kind of person he's joking about. Great job to Chris Rock. Racism-centric comedy has been around in love for as long as I can remember, with African Americans and Asians being the focus. This is no different when the focus of the racism-centric comedy are on white people. If you're able to laugh at yourself, you'd enjoy this special, as it is very pertinent to what we're seeing today in society. If you're uncomfortable with recognizing the privilege that you experience on a daily basis, you will find this uncomfortable and racist. The site is... Fuck. This site is completely irrelevant. When you see a divergence this high, you know one side is lying. Spoiler alert, it's not the audience. I used to think Chris Rock was one of the greats. I spent 10 minutes watching the special, and it's completely changed my opinion. Full disclosure, I'm white. But also, full disclosure, I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan, and after his latest special, even more so. I don't like to divide things that way, because I'm not convinced it matters. Chris seems to have drunk the Kool-Aid on that front. I've seen the news stories of the cops shooting white kids, Chris, once. Oh, here we go. And then they disappeared. You said to pay attention. Maybe you should follow your own advice. The media are burying stories that don't fit the narrative. He's right that there's a gun crisis in this country. He's wrong that only black folks are the targets. That's not what he... Okay, whatever. How many black people were in the audience outside Mandalay Bay in Vegas at a fucking country music show? This guy's lost his fucking mind, and it makes me sad to post a 1-star review, because he used to be one of the good ones. And in this age of cancel culture, comedy's never been more important. Massive disappointment. Just missed the mark by a mile. Thank God we've still got Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr, but damn few others are willing to step into this death trap. Seems to be new casualties every day. There is disproportional cop-on-black violence, and these tirades about how there's also white victims of police brutality and gun violence as well mostly only come out when a black guy gets up and says, hey, I'm sick of this shit. I had a family member go weeks without saying jack shit about what happened to George Floyd. The first meme posted about any of the protests were some randos flipping off a dude in riot gear. That's where the priorities are a lot of the time. That's where the frustration comes from a lot of black comedians. Silence, silence, silence. Now listen here. Not all cops, not all victims of guns, not all Republicans. But look, subjectivity. I am full-heartedly convinced that this guy watched this special and his blood really started boiling. I know it because that's exactly how I felt when I first watched this special when it came out.
You would think the cops would occasionally shoot a white kid just to make it look good. You would think that every couple of months they'd look at their dead nigga calendar and go, oh my God, we're up to 16. We gotta shoot a white kid quick. An equal world. I wanna see white mothers on TV crying.
And there you have it. Chris Rock says he wants to live in a world of true equality where we see the same per capita number of white young people, white children being shot. Well, Mr. Rock, you're going to have to somehow get young white kids to behave like the young black inner city kids, where you have 95% of the crime in cities like Chicago being black on black crime. You're going to have to somehow get white youth to behave in that same barbarous, murderous form.
It's all about dividing people up, having some race-based system where you're constantly trying to judge the other person. Oh, what are they thinking about me? I wonder what they're thinking about me. Oh, we're a different skin color. Where did all of this come from, though?
Those monkeys from those African countries, damn them, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Was it like this 10 years ago? No, it honestly wasn't. This is post-Obama. None of this was an issue. We weren't being divided on race until after Obama. A black president that was voted in by white people, and then Black Panther breaks records, but somehow we're racist.
Me and my partner sat down, hyped by the rating, hyped by the fact that Bo Burnham was involved, and when he got to his bit about shooting white kids, we got really ass mad. How could he just trivialize people who were on the receiving end of the brutality that him and his people received? Well, years later, we came to really understand, that they're not on the receiving end of the exact same thing. It sucks when people die. It sucks when cops overuse their power and brutalize the people that they're trying to protect. But this country was founded on racism. Every step up to the next best thing, abolition, desegregation, integration, while relatively better, is still really fucked up. Conversations like this like to scoot that under the rug. And I hate to tell you this, but a lot of your fucking heroes, Carlin, Bill Burr, Louis C.K., for every bit that they have about coming down on oversensitivity, they have 2 or 3 other bits about the fucked up shit that ignorant people do in this country. But we plug our ears during those parts, don't we? So if I had to be really uncharitable, edgelords and ignorant folk really like this one because they don't think much of the trans shit. They dislike this one because Chris Rock said, hey, things might change if more white bodies were piling up instead of black bodies. That's all that happened here. Don't let anyone tell you anything else. Addendum, I'm looking up clips for this special, knowing that I'm probably going to use them as visual reference. How in the holy name of tittatry did I and everyone else forget about this part of Sticks and Stones? Gun control. Recurring element throughout this bit? How white people are fucking crazy, have guns, and are violent towards minorities. Holy shit.
I've given this a lot of thought. I don't see any peaceful way to disarm America's whites. One thing that's going to save this country from itself, same thing that always saves this country from itself, and that is African Americans. And I know the question that a lot of y'all have in your minds is, should we do it? And you know what we have to do. This is a fucking election year. We got to be serious. Every able-bodied African American must register for a legal firearm. That's the only way they'll change the law. Shooting up school is a white kid's game. It's fucking crazy. You know, I hated school too. It never occurred to me. Kill everybody in school?
That's the power of comedy. We, as humans, selectively remember and forget the parts that we agree with and disagree with, depending on how much we like that figure at the time. Dave Chappelle's a prophet. He's a shining example of just ha-ha funnies. Yeah, I laughed my ass off as he addressed systemic racism in a manner every bit as on point and hilarious as any of his material from his TV show. I am ashamed that I got so far up my own ass about the parts that I disagree with that I forgot about all this shit.
Son, listen to me. If somebody comes to your school and wants to shoot it up, I'm just gonna be honest with you. You probably gonna get shot, nigga. I'm just being real. Famous dad, I talk a lot of shit. They gonna be gunning for you, little buddy.
That's a joke about his son getting shot, dude. To pull this shit off. This isn't far off at all from what Chris Rock got shit for in the other special. But his ponage of the snowflakes gave the people enough of what they wanted and needed that they totally forgot how Dave spewed hate speech for 2 to 3 minutes. I just rewatched this and I laughed my ass off, and it's a testament to why people are so mad at Dave in the first place, is because when he does take jabs at the other groups, like any good comedian should, they're not nearly as clever, they're not nearly as informed, and they're not nearly as constructive. One of the first things he did before his big ol' comeback was talking about how Kendrick Lamar was saying some shit that needed to be said. Here he is, coming back, if ever so briefly, doing the same thing like he always has. Now, if only, he would be like a little morally consistent for minorities that he finds annoying, And that's all it really is. He said it himself. It's really annoying. It's frustrating to talk to these people. I like how me imitating Dave is like me imitating a white person. Well, let's get to Hannah. In contrast with Dave's special, a subpar, occasionally funny, hour-long ride that's really heavy on milking material that he's at once ass-mad and uneducated about. Yes, even if he has trans friends, just use math. Use basic math. Use 101 plug and chug. It's not that hard to figure out.
TERF is an acronym. Stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. This is a real thing. This is a group of women that hate transgender. They don't hate transgender women, but they look at trans women the way we blacks might look at blackface. It offends them. Like, ooh, this bitch is doing an impression of me. I'm Team TERF. I agree. Gender is a fact. You have to look at it from a woman's perspective. Now, I shouldn't speak on this because I am not a woman, nor am I trans. I'm not a nigger either. What if I was Chinese, but born in this nigger body? That's not funny. Hey, everybody, I'm Chinese!
This is a progressive work of art, in my opinion.
I actually am pretty good at controlling the tension, and I know how to balance that to get the laugh at the right place. But in order to balance the tension in the room with that story, I couldn't tell that story as it actually happened. I couldn't tell the part of the story where that man realised his mistake, and he came back. And he said, oh, no, I get it. You're a lady faggot. I'm allowed to beat the shit out of yous, and he did. And this tension, it's yours. I am not helping you anymore. You need to learn what this feels like, because this tension is what not normals carry inside of them all of the time, because it is dangerous to be different.
Not funny, more like a self-righteous TED Talk. If that's what you're into, go ahead. Of course, the critics' rating and the average viewer is in stark contrast because most outlets are chomping at the bits to support this, lest they seem behind the times. Quite possibly the least funny thing I've ever seen. This is just garbage. It's not funny, it's sad. There are thousands of hysterically funny women. This is not one of them. Not funny enough. She needs to take some Dave Chappelle lessons on how to combine humor with issues rather than going for a full-on lecture. Sammy? Excuse me? Did you see his Floyd-related special? He takes pot shots at Candace Owens and describes in vivid detail how the guy died.
This man kneeled on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Can you imagine that? He called for his dead mother. I've only seen that once before in my life. My father, on his deathbed, called for his grandmother.
Real funny. Not even remotely funny. I didn't even twitch the corners of my mouth once, let alone smile or laugh. Hannah Gadsby is typical of individuals who claim to be comedians but don't have an ounce of comedy in their body. We're getting to the part where I really just want to highlight how we have a very rigid, conservative definition of comedy and being a comedian. These last couple I'm going to read are relatively charitable. There's not a whole lot of malice behind them, but there is a lot of gatekeeping and pretension in my view. As a stand-up comedy, it's a dismal failure with competent but hardly memorable jokes that go on for way too long. As a character study of a severely broken woman, it's fascinating. As a humanities lecture with some forgettable humor tossed in, it's outstanding. Her ramblings about men didn't offend me. Do some of you people think this is the first time our gender has heard any of this? It's hardly the groundbreaking work some of you seem to believe it to be. I've noticed some unfortunate things from reading the reviews on this, though. If you're only mildly entertained by dull, razor-thin, feminist-baiting tripe, you're some sort of incel. Men want comedy. Most of the top-tier comedians are men. Aw, fuck. I really thought, damn it. You trapped me. Women want validation. She makes a better public speaker preaching to the choir because as a comedian, she does little to dispel the tired stereotype that women aren't funny. Wow. Wow. What a 180. I saw the top portion of this while scrolling through these, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll use this as like a less mean one. No, you were clearly affected by the culture war. Fuck, dude. There were no jokes. Simple as that. Uh-huh. Nanette is a powerful telling of emotional stories. Perhaps it would be a good book. Stand-up comedy? This is not. This is without a singular doubt in mind the worst Netflix comedy special I have ever seen. I noticed how it was given a perfect rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so I had to go give it a watch. I was prepared to enjoy the show and laugh, but instead it was just this annoying woman talking about her experience being a female in society. There were a few good jokes here and there, but it was more of a coping mechanism to understand her story. I do not recommend the special to anyone who wants to laugh and have a good time. And that's... wants to laugh and have a good time. Comedian. Oh, her comedy. All right, you guys ready? Are you guys ready? George Carlin, one of the most influential and adored comedians of his time or any time. I really do love that motherfucker. I love the trajectory of his career. I like how he started out as a rock-solid, traditional comic who would go on talk shows and shit and do funny voices and characters with occasional Mort Saw, Lenny Bruce-inspired observations. Then he grew out his hair, became a hippie, and bridged the gap between two generations of viewers, helping us understand language, how it's used, why we censor certain words. God damn. Along with Lenny, he made monumental censorship spectacles of himself in a court of law. The final era of his career, while packed with funny jokes, is packed to the brim of him just saying stuff. A lot of it political.
They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money.
I'm gonna tell you guys a story. When I was about 2 or 3 years into being a fan of George, Bill Hicks, Louis, one of my best friends who introduced me to Louis in the first place sat down and watched some of their stuff with me. While he kind of giggled at parts, later we had a conversation about the material. And he said, it just doesn't feel like comedy. It feels like any YouTube ranter that I've seen in the last few years. Like they're great speakers, but they're not really telling jokes. Carlin! You type in stand-up comedy, you go to the Wikipedia page, and he's there. Carlin! And yet at the same time, I don't disagree with the sentiment. I don't disagree with the underlying sentiment with a lot of these people. What bugs me is that it being more lecture-like, or more rant-like, robs it of value as a piece of stand-up. It's just... I just find it historically ignorant. Like on the modern end, one of my favorite specials, My Girlfriend's Boyfriend by Mike Birbiglia. The same friend watched this with me, and at first, I was worried because he wasn't really laughing that much. And then the more we saw what Mike was doing, how he would just kind of do drive-by jokelets, layering them on top of the wider story before it explodes at the end with callbacks and a catharsis that you get with emotional investment with a character, he turned to me and said, this is great. He's progressing the art form.
As this oral atrocity is taking place, all I can think is I'm not alone anymore. I'm not in the non-makeout club.
I just want to say I really value this guy's opinion on comedy. He's the single funniest person that I personally know. And out of everyone that I know in my personal life, he would make the best stand-up comedian himself, but he just robs the world of that opportunity like Jeff Bezos denies the world money. I love you, man. I know you watch my stuff sometimes. But to hear him say that about Mike Birbiglia, that really locked how much I appreciate what Mike does. Mike isn't laugh out loud funny. He has the traditional chops of a comedian. His earlier albums are more joke and punchline based, but his best work, his most acclaimed shit, is when he plays with the form. And if the formula for comedy greatness comes down to how much I personally laughed or how many quote unquote jokes were in there, because joke is like what 2 or 3 degrees to the right of was it funny, is very, very subjective. And that's recent. If you go back, if you pay attention to what even George was doing in the 70s, similar territory. A lot of sociological exploration, a lot of lists, just lists of shit that you aren't allowed to say in certain spaces. Those were good enough to get laughs out of people. They're just words.
Circle jerk, cock teaser, wet dream, cunt struck, pussy whipped, short arm, tuna taco, group growth.
The heroes of Carlin, Lenny Bruce, Mort Saul. Guys, if you watch some of this shit, our generation isn't going to get most of it because so much of their comedy was based in politics and public figures that were relevant at the time.
So that's it. So they got the kid, out of the well. And the report came from Patchogue, New York, that the child is out of the well. The doctor bill will not have to be paid. Of course, the child will have to be returned to the well.
Almost everybody is a right-wing social democrat. That would be Eisenhower, Romney, Rockefeller, Javits, Kuchel, former Governor Brown, and Frank Sinatra, Kim Novak, Jack Jones, goes on now, Huntley and Brinkley, they're here.
And yet most comics, especially people who dabble in social critique, which a lot of the greats do, much as you fucking snowflakes like to just have a good time, look back on these guys as pioneers of this method of comedy. And I consider it comedy. I've just gotten more chaotic when it comes to what counts or doesn't count as art. My umbrella is the size of the sky. I have no interest in hitting a checklist to get this label. What matters is the content. It's the way you should approach all art, regardless of what lens you pop on in order to consume it, because there is high and low art, I believe that much. I have some standards. I have enough residual bias of my fucking Rotten Tomatoes brain that if I see a high score from critics, I'm more likely to watch it than I am with the movie that's got a low score from critics. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I'm a slave to institutions, even if some of those institutions are just cutting through the bullshit and making you laugh. Like, hop off. How little respect do you have to have for this art form to ask a question like, was it funny? Or to apply critical thinking to one group of people and then totally shut it off for a different group of people.
So I'm not very experienced in controlling anger. It's not my place to be angry on a comedy stage. I'm supposed to be doing self-deprecating humor.
Just pick up the phone and call up God. Yeah, hi, God. This is Ellen. Ellen. DeGeneres. What's so funny? No, I never thought of that. It does sound like that, doesn't it?
So how'd you gain the weight? I ate a lot. No, you said 50 pounds. You shouldn't let that happen to you. You're very pretty.
You know what?
No, I don't want to hear.
Let me tell you this.
Oh, yeah, I saw Nell Carter on here last night who'd lost. Yes, but you couldn't tell. She's still very chubby. She should lose more. Don't you think? Don't you think she should lose more? Well, I think, yeah. Well, see, people go, are not people that help friends that diet. You must tell a friend the truth. You must say you are still a pig. Lose more weight. That's a friend.
I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer. And I made so many jokes over the years about how small my chest was that I started to think my boobs overheard me and were just like, you know what? We're sick of this. Let's kill her.
Do it. I'm just a miserable lesbian, ruining all the fun on the banter. When men we'd never met, this was his icebreaker. He said, did you know it takes less muscles to smile than frown. Now, the men in the audience are sitting there going, oh, you've experienced an isolated incident. And the women are sitting there going, oh, for fuck's sake. And non-binary folk are like, is that a hard day for you, is it?
Damn it. She squandered it. You squandered it, Hannah. I was ready to laugh. I was. You had me. You had me. Now she's going into the absolutely insufferable feminist harangue about being told to smile. And of course she throws in the thing about non-binary folks because, you know, she can't make a man versus woman joke without acknowledging the invented non-binary category. And that's good, obviously, because diversity, inclusion, political correctness, all the stuff that makes comedy great.
Try to embarrass you, like when you're with your girlfriend. I'll come over right in front of her face. And would you like to buy a flower for the lady? Hey, let me tell you something. I fucked this lady 4 times already today, all right? Catch me early evenings, you fucking chink bastard. You slanty-eyed cocksucker, what you are. They're all the same, Japs, chinks, it's all the same shit. Where were the Japs coming from anyway? Didn't we drop 2 bombs on them a few years ago? What was it?
Claimed that you were an influence on Trump.
Well, you know what it is? The guy like stole my whole act. I'm going, he's doing me. And he's wearing the red tie with the white shirt like he's Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah.
You know, I'm waiting for the guy to come out and go, okay, man, everything's all right, all right? And he had all those arguments with Hillary for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking the guy could get his point across in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
They should have a sign at the airport that says, look, if you don't know the language, get the fuck out of the country. Yeah, they got the sign. It's written in Spanish.
When men do it, heroes of free speech.
The problem with comedy is that comedy is one category. It's just comedy. But comedy could be Cat Stevens, it could be Guns N' Roses, it could be the Ghetto Boys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like when you go to see music, there's very distinct genres. Like you could go see a folk singer and what they're doing on stage, like really slow and quiet, is music. But then you go to see fucking Led Zeppelin and you go, okay, well that's music too? How the fuck is that music too? How are they the same? Well, they are both music. Just like we do comedy, and she's doing a version of comedy. Yeah. Some of it is really funny, and some of it is her just talking about stuff in like a very serious way. That's fine.
Yeah.
We're not against each other. This is what's crazy. Everybody's like, you know, this is deconstructing comedy, and comedy's dead now. Like, what are you talking about? That's crazy.
That's very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. That's very clever and very fresh and
Well, that's wonderful hearing that from you.
No, I mean it. It's good material.
Thank you.
How long you been doing this?
4 years.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you work in the comedy clubs and like the improv and...
Oh, a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
The road is tough.
I know, it's got to be. And it's always tougher for a woman to do comedy.
I say that, and men think I'm being chauvinistic.
No, it's not at all, because they'll accept a certain amount, they'll accept a little more aggression in men for some reason.
Exactly. I think men can get away with a lot more.
Yeah.
And which is understandable, I think.
Yeah. But that's very good stuff.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
There is no way anyone would dare test their strength out on me because you all know there is nothing stronger than a broken woman who has rebuilt herself.
I didn't really find that funny. I just kind of found it sad. Fuck you. Fuck you. These are storytellers. These are lyricists. These are clowns. These are poets. You are not going to make me lower my standards just because we disagree on shit. Whew. That got realer than I anticipated, but I love this shit. I love a lot of motherfuckers who have made me really, really mad. On a human level, I respect comedians. They put their head on the chopping block and sometimes get cut for it. Sometimes they get cut in ways where I'm like, oh man, society really is bonkers that they're freaking out this much. Other times, it hurts me. It disappoints me. I feel let down that they're not living up to the standards that they established with their previous work. But that's the game. As Bosef said,
If it's rock and roll, well, who cares what they think about it? This is from people who have had their opinions heard relentlessly, hours every night, all the time. And then a blogger gets up and expresses their opinion in a blog, and it's like, what?
I don't know how much you'd classify this content as chill, but boy, did I mope today. But I was done taking passive-aggressive shots at the closer and the conversation around it. I had to air this. Otherwise, it was going to eat me up inside and jeopardize the shit that's not nearly as controversial that I want to do soon. And it's coming. I promise. Subscribe if this did anything for you. This is Lanooski, signing out.